Welcome to Horror Coast to Coast, where we review a horror movie from opposite sides of the continental U.S. From the haunted woods of New England, I'm Brian.
And from the cursed coastlines of California, I'm Michelle.
This week we're talking about Men from 2022, written and directed by Alex Garland.
So the summary of this movie is basically Harper retreats to the countryside to be alone in the wake of a tragedy. But her unease at the town's leering and uncannily similar men grows into a fully fledged nightmare as her arrival awakens something primal in the forest.
Nice vague intro.
Yeah, but not wrong. And I kind of, I appreciate that because, I actually didn't read it before I watched the movie. I just thought, okay, whatever, let's just watch it. It's called Men. It looks creepy, whatever. I did not think to look at the summary this time, mostly because I did it with The Exorcist and I thought it kind of changed my expectations. But I will say one thing. Was it even that obvious that she was aware of how similar the men were? Which, by the way, I'll say for the record that all of the male characters in the movie were played by Rory Kinnear.
Yeah.
And it actually took me a second to realize that.
Yeah, it took me way too long, to be honest.
Yeah. So the cop, right, was him without any prosthetics or makeup or anything, right? And I thought, oh, this is the only non-made-up character for the movie. Like, I thought, okay, this is the only normal guy, and then the rest of them are all weird. And it took me a minute to be like, wait a minute, that guy is every other guy. I
thought Jeffrey was kind of the normal one.
I absolutely did. I was like, okay, so maybe there's something going with Jeffrey. Yeah, I don't know. It was this was definitely a ride, a crazy ride.
Yeah, I went in blind too, so I didn't read anything. I'd heard about the existence of the movie, and I knew basically that it was like social commentary on men, and that's about it. And I saw the A24 title card, and I was like, okay, I thought this was either A24 or that kind of movie, and yeah, it was like the epitome of what you expect as an A24 movie.
Yeah, so I didn't go in completely blind. What I did do was look up the director because I knew the name and I was like, I've heard of him before. What has he done? And turns out he's a writer, right? I didn't realize this. I thought he was a director, but he's a writer, and he was his like introduction was the movie The Beach, which was actually based on the book that he wrote called The Beach. And I went and read a summary of that because I didn't see that movie. It came out in like 2000. Interesting. But then I realized later, he wrote 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. And I guess he's writing 28 Years Later, which is coming out soon.
I think it already came out.
Did it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't keep track of those just because zombies are not in my periphery. But it's interesting because I had to go through and figure out what did he write versus what did he write and direct. So the 28 Days Later movies, he wrote those, but someone else directed them. Whereas Annihilation, he wrote and directed. And I thought, okay, if this is anything like Annihilation, I know exactly what to expect. And it really kind of lived up to it. It started out like you know exactly what's going on, and then it turns into, wait, I'm sorry, what just happened? And is this real life? Like it was kind of a crazy trippy movie.
Yeah, this movie, it ended up being simultaneously exactly what I expected and nothing at all as I expected it to be.
I also wanted to just point out that no good thing ever comes of a character who's running away from their lives and expecting to find a new start as like a caretaker of a creepy house or a babysitter for creepy kids. I mean, we've seen this already. There's the Skeleton Key, there's The Boy, there's Haunting of Hill House, and those characters all have some trauma background, and they're coming to this new start. And the new start ends up being more of a nightmare than the thing they were leading. So I feel like that is certainly a trope, and it's interesting because it always ends up not being better than what they were trying to get away from, which is always it's an interesting theme, I suppose. I mean, I think it's kind of a common theme of, you can't run away from your problems, and movies, I guess, are trying to teach us that. Uh, So, yes, that was the first thing I noticed when I thought, okay, she's coming here and she's hoping to like wash her hands of something. This is going to be worse than what she's leaving behind, which I would actually say maybe it wasn't considering what her trauma was, but I don't know. That's yet to be discussed, and others may have different opinions on that. So what did you initially think? How about the opening scene?
I really liked the beginning of this movie. I think, it set a really good tone. The soundtrack and the atmosphere were so good, the cinematography and the performances were all just really good. So it set, like, a strong atmosphere right off the beginning.
Yeah, I loved it. Um, in it right immediately when I saw the opening and the music that went along with it, I was like, "Oh, yes, this is gonna be great." Um, Weirdly, I notice themes, which I generally don't. At the very beginning, there's all the dandelion, like, seeds floating everywhere, and that happens several other times in the movie where there's just dandelion seeds floating around. I couldn't for the life of me figure out what that was supposed to represent, but I noticed it every time it happened. But that's how it opened.
I feel like there's some, historical lore here that maybe we don't have context for.
Oh,
Like, things that they're drawing on that I'm just, like, not familiar with, and I feel like it all ties together, especially, like, the plant
yeah.
theme.
Those statues, I think, were were a
Yes.
thing. I don't recognize them.
Yeah, they definitely are.
Yeah, I don't recognize them.
And that's kinda like the folk horror aspect of this movie, which I feel was a little underplayed. I actually would've liked more of that kind of thing.
I wish that I found a magic tunnel that let me create cool echo music.
I love that theme, that was so cool.
I was also this would never happen, but also fascinated by it.
Yeah, and this applies to really the whole movie. It's strange how little she reacted to that situation. Like, she reacted to it like this was a normal thing that could happen and not that it was totally bizarre. But I also kind of like that she just rolled with it.
Yeah. No, I actually thought when she was doing it, I was like, "This isn't real. What are you doing? Do you not realize that there" I thought there was another person in there that was calling back to her. And I thought eventually it would be more apparent that there was another person there calling back to her, but it never quite went that far. And so I think it was supposed to be her just playing with her own echo.
Yeah, I think so.
But even that was like, "Okay, isn't this a little strange to you? Like, what you're doing is really cool, but echoes really do not reverberate to this extent."
Yeah, the way she could just layer them.
Yeah, I was like, "What? This is so cool."
It's nature's Ford track machine.
Well, like I said, I wish I found a magic tunnel that would let me create cool echo music.
Do you want to get into the spoiler section?
Yeah, we can get into the spoilers. First, can I say that when I did look up the movie because I had to look up, there was something I looked up. Oh, where to watch it? I wasn't sure what platform it was on, and the first thing that came up was a Reddit thread that said, "Men is an incredibly good movie, and I hated watching it." And I thought that was funny. It doesn't apply to me. I don't feel that way, but I absolutely could see someone saying that, and it's a very appropriate, response to it, I think.
I enjoyed watching this movie.
I enjoyed it.
Mostly how well done it all was. Everything was so, like, tight and well made that it really just, held it together in that aspect.
Yeah.
So even when there were things that were, like, frustrating or I didn't particularly like, I was still on board for the ride because it was a sturdy ride.
It really was. I also found myself looking for meaning in different things because I just kind of felt that this movie had that vibe of like everything means something. Like when she walks onto the property and she picks the apple from the tree. I was like, "What are you doing? Don't take that apple. Oh my
Yeah.
God." This is so symbolic. It's horrible. Stop. You know what happens to the woman who takes the apple from the tree?
Of course.
Yeah, I was like, this can't be good. This can't lead to good things.
Yeah, and that was a little more obvious than some of the, other things that were obviously symbolic, but not obvious what they were symbolic of. What comes to mind is the deer scene.
I didn't get that at all. I mean, it was creepy, and I was also like, I don't know if I want to pan into an empty eye socket of a dead deer, but I guess this is where we're going. Um,
Have you ever seen Antichrist?
no, and the reason I haven't seen Antichrist is because I know, like, a brief summary of it, and I feel like it'd be too much for me. And Lars von Trier, a lot of times it's too much for me.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get that, but that had, like, Antichrist vibes for sure.
Okay. Yeah, Antichrist is a movie that I feel like at some point in my life I will make myself watch, but I haven't gotten to that point yet. But yeah, I was definitely stymied by that deer. And also, when we panned in, it was less decayed than when we panned out, correct?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. Just wondering, because I was like, I think it was dead both times, but one was like not as maggoty as the second one.
When it panned out, it was so decayed that I wasn't actually sure if it was still the deer. I'm like, "Is this gonna pan out and it's something different?" It's like, "Oh, no, it's just really rotted at this point."
Yeah. So that I could 100% see that meaning something, and it was lost on me.
It definitely doesn't mean nothing, I'm sure.
I'd love to look at some kind of like a thematic analysis of the movie. I mean, granted, part of what we're talking about, I hope we'll touch on things like that. But I would love to see like a paper someone wrote on the depth of all what everything in this movie, because I, like you said, things went over my head because there's a folk horror aspect to it, and I wasn't aware of that part of the culture, right? Um,
Yeah, I felt like there was some lore that they could have got into, 'cause it was really, like, the segments with, like, the statue and really, like, the green man were pretty brief in the whole scheme of things, that you don't really get a feel for what it's tied to in terms of, like, I'm sure it's based on, like, historical folklore.
yeah. Okay, so this woman is is like trying to live down the memory of her husband who has committed suicide in a very visceral way, and she comes to this cottage. Now, I can't quite understand what that what the process there was. Was she just renting the place? Did she just find this nice
Yeah.
house and just say, "I want to stay there"? Because I
I think she was renting it out, like, as her new home.
okay, so she was intending to stay there and like live there.
That was the vibe I got, yeah.
Okay. Well, I wasn't sure because when she talked to her friend, it was sort of, this is the thing you're choosing to help yourself heal, and I thought that was like a not like a permanent thing, like the process you're going through when you're grieving and you're trying to like repair the parts of yourself that you feel need repair, need care. Um, but then when that process was done, that maybe she would go back to a life she had before. She seemed to be working, right? There's a scene where she's working remotely. It looks like.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Skype call or something. Yeah, but I took it as, like, basically, this was her starting a new life as a way to move on,
okay.
because it was, like, the apartment she shared with her husband before, right?
Yeah.
I don't imagine she was still renting that.
Well, and I think that part of the reason it struck me as like this is just a temporary like Airbnb situation is because she was in an apartment in the city, I think. And and I'm assuming it's London. Did she say she was from London at one point?
Uh, I'm not sure.
I thought maybe, but anyway, she went from an apartment setup to all of a sudden this like grand cottage out in the middle of nowhere. And so it kind of felt like if you had access to that before, why did you live in a city in a little apartment?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I'm not sure.
but so I just assumed her income was apartment in the city, not buying a cottage in the middle of the country. But who knows? I mean, that might have not have been the intention, but
Yeah, I'm not sure if they, made it explicit.
yeah. So let me also say that the first half of the movie which had all the really beautiful scenes and music that set everything up. It had all the like it was slower, definitely. I watched all that during the day. Totally fine. The second half of the movie, I laid down in bed and I was watching it on my phone. And when she's talking to her friend on her cell phone and that guy appears in the background, I almost did a spit take. My heart started racing. I was like suddenly aware of the fact that I was laying alone in the dark. And I wasn't alone because, Henry is next to me asleep, but I was very aware of the fact that it was dark and my window next to me was open. It was just like it was a weird like moment of vulnerability where I thought, oh my God. Yeah, that scared the crap out of me.
So is that like right where you picked up?
Not exactly where I picked up, but probably maybe 15 minutes before that. So I didn't realize it was going to get like that intense so quickly when I laid down. I thought, okay, maybe this is going to be a slow burn and then maybe it'll just kind of pan out to something meaningful at the end. But no, it just like it took a turn.
Yeah, I got pretty weird pretty quick.
Yeah, it took a turn
Yeah.
and I started like as it took that turn. But yeah, holy shit, I was especially when he started following her as she was leading her friend through she's leading her friend through the house on a tour over the phone, and he's following her outside the window. That was so freaking scary to watch.
Yeah, so when she's, like, on a Skype call with, like, her work client or something, right?
At first, I think.
So, did they have, like, a perfect view of his naked ass right outside her door when she didn't notice him?
So I thought the camera was facing forward and she was looking at the screen. And so she was showing the person in front. And so my understanding at the time was, oh my God, what I thought was gonna happen was, oh my God, she's about to pan over and that person is gonna be like, who the hell's behind you? And that's not what happened. They got to see through the house, and she's the one who noticed him when she turned the other way, which for me somehow is maybe on par with how scary that is. But I was expecting the person on the phone to say, "Oh my God, look behind you."
Yeah, I was expecting that too, because 'cause I've seen, like, that kind of thing done before, like, have you seen Hush?
Yes, I was thinking that this reminded me of Hush.
Yeah, definitely, and, like, the whole, like, the best friend, like, checking in on them and whatnot, that reminded me of Hush.
Yeah. No, this definitely had Hush vibe. Kate Siegel's so good in that movie. I had the same reaction in that movie when that guy is lurking around her and she can't hear him and he doesn't realize that she can't hear. And then when he does, he starts to kind of like play with it a bit. And I'm like, no, oh my God.
Yeah, it's messing with her.
Yeah, this is exactly you hit it spot on. I didn't think about Hush at the time I was watching it, but now that you say that, I'm like, "Oh my God, yes, that's exactly what this was."
Yeah, I thought of that, like, immediately.
So, what are we thinking about all these different characters? Because my immediate thought is they're supposed to symbolize different aspects of the male perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the different shapes misogyny takes, essentially.
Right. Okay. And what about the kid?
The kid, in air quotes.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the weirdest CGI.
I didn't read him as a kid when he had, like, the Marilyn Monroe mask on. I really didn't read him as a kid when he took it off, and even after the vicar, like, referred to him as a kid, I'm like, "Is that like a metaphor? Like, maybe he's an emotionally stunted 30-year-old that's treated like a kid?" Like, it took me so long to come around to the thinking that, like, "Oh, the movie wants me to think this is an actual kid," because it's clearly not a kid.
It's clearly not a kid. It is a CGI of Rory Kinnear's head on a child's body, right?
Yeah.
And it was so weird when he took that mask off. So that's where the surrealness of the movie started for me, where I felt like I was being asked either to suspend my disbelief about this particular thing, or there's something going on in the movie where that kid is just called a kid, but he isn't a kid. And that was another aspect of suspending my disbelief, or maybe just kind of, here's where we're trying to take this. And that's what surrealness of it started for me.
And back to like what I said about like just the way she reacts to things. She does not react to this weird kid in a Marilyn Monroe mask being like, "Do you want to play?" And she's like, "No, thank you."
Yeah. And in fact, there's the part at the end where she's got the knife and she's like, "I'm gonna cut you." And he's like, "No, you won't." And I assume the implication is you won't hurt me because I'm a kid. And you think at that point she's gonna be like, too bad, so sad. And no, she doesn't. And you're like, oh, maybe he is really supposed to be a kid. Because she's clearly responding to him like he's a kid. Like, a kid threatens you, you still don't really want to hurt them because they're kids.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was like, "What are you doing? Stab him. He's clearly a demon or something." Yeah, that was wild.
Do you think it's like a deliberate choice, like the movie is trying to say something by the way she doesn't like react to this type of stuff that's clearly like unsettling and weird, and she just treats it like, yeah, whatever.
So I actually did not enjoy the fact that the female perspective was sort of simplified to this one woman because I really did see her reactions is sort of being like a monolith for how all women react to things because the idea is that we're so used to facing this kind of misogyny on a regular basis that we've learned to just be non-responsive to it because anything else runs the risk of fanning the flames or inciting the people who are behaving this way towards you. And so yeah, it seemed like it was a learned behavior, but it also seems like it was kind of just a part of her trauma where she was literally just coming off of this problem with her husband and dealing with the aftermath of his suicide, that maybe she was just emotionally numb. Maybe she didn't have the capacity to take on anything else, especially anything else like this. I mean, it 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 was just so interesting how you couldn't even take a minute to wrap your head around the thing that happened to her because the rest of what was going on was just so out there.
Yeah. I mean, it is a movie about men written and directed by men with no women apparently in the writer's room, which is an interesting choice. Because it makes me think of like how Get Out is like a commentary on like racism, but it's from the perspective of a black man. So it kind of hits a lot harder for me, but feels like a black man is giving his voice, whereas this, like in ways I didn't actually look up who did it, who wrote and directed this before watching it. But I had the feeling I was like, this is written and directed by men, isn't it? And yeah, it kind of felt like
Men by men.
men talking over women.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's kind of weird to have that vibe, but also be about
Yeah.
misogyny.
Well, and it's
It's kind of like Joss Whedon, how he made Buffy, and then ended up kind of being a misogynist weirdo douchebag.
yeah. Well, I was actually gonna say that I think that it starts off with establishing Harper as a strong female character. I interpreted it to be doing that intentionally, that she's supposed to be this strong female character, which I suppose the message was also women are strong, right? If that was really what she was supposed to just portray. She's a strong woman, and this is women are strong, and even strong women have to deal with these kinds of things. As the movie went on, like it starts out with this message that's kind of feminist, but then as the movie goes on, it gets more misogynist, which is I don't even know how to process that.
Yeah, she didn't really have that many moments of strength. It's like I would have liked to see more of that from her. I think other characters, like remember Oddity?
Yes.
That main character was like so good, smart, intelligent, and strong. I kind of wished that Harper was a little more like her.
Yeah. I mean, yes. And I see what you're saying now about Harper having kind of muted reactions to things. Yeah, I really don't know what that was supposed to be aside from, like I said, my guess is portraying the perspective of women who are just jaded by the constant exposure. Um, but aside from that, I couldn't tell you what the actual intention was.
There wasn't just the misogyny and the creepy men, but it was also, like we said, the tunnel. And there's also finding her husband's body was like very muted reaction, which was strange.
Yes. When she goes down there, I wrote that down actually. That was the first thing I wrote down. Because at the beginning of the movie, it shows him falling and then it shows her going downstairs. And I wrote, "Oh my God, is she going down there to see his body?" And yes, eventually that's where it leads. And it's gruesome and she doesn't have a response. Oh my God. You know what response I really was surprised at? But honestly, I was too busy experiencing it myself to focus on how she was reacting. When she stabs that guy in the hand with the knife and he pulls it through the mailbox slot, I was like, I cannot watch this. I covered the screen and I kept peeking back to see, like, is the knife all the way through yet? It was horrible. It was horrifying. I was like, this is horrible. This is gruesome. I don't want to experience this.
Yeah, that was wild.
But I wasn't paying attention to her reaction to that because I feel like it probably was understated, like everything else.
We didn't see much of it because the camera just stays on his arm for the entire time. It's like a slow, agonizing shot of him just pulling his hand back until it splits in two.
Oh, God. Oh, you know what else really kind of creeped me out is when the vicar. So after the first guy has his hand split and they all have the same injury, the vicar puts his hand on her shoulder and the two fingers on each side. Oh my God. I couldn't. Ugh. I was like, I'm about to turn my phone across the room. This is so horrifying. But yeah.
The introduction to the vicar, I wasn't a huge fan of because I thought it was way too obvious he was gonna be a douchebag. It seemed like they wanted to lull you into a sense of security with him, but like immediately when he showed up, I knew he was gonna be a total scumbag. It wasn't like a subtle build, really. It was just like, so why'd you make him kill himself anyway?
I actually thought the vicar was my favorite character because he was the most like I don't know a better way to explain this. I thought that the vicar was the best symbol of the kind of male persona that is like the most toxic that you see the most often.
Yeah.
It's like I want what's best for you. I know what's best for you. And then, so why'd you go ahead and do this, you slutty slut whore? And you're just like, whoa, I thought you were my friend. And suddenly, like, it's the people that lull you into that sense of trust. And, and she's not even lulled by what he says to her. Initially, she's lulled by what is the fact that he presents himself as a member of the church and he identifies with, I see you, I heard your pain, I can tell something's happening. And that's the sense of false security that you're lulled into. I mean, I can't speak to this because I have not had a specific experience like this, but just reading different things, stories from people I've known and things I've read online, it seems like this is a real personality that women navigate. The male figure that thinks they know what's best and they're the authority figure and they're the ones who are going to tell you how you're feeling. I mean, he was mansplaining the heck out of her feelings, right?
Oh, for sure.
And she's like, "Yes, this is right. I'm with you." Until he takes a turn and then she's like, "Wait, I'm sorry, what?" But that's the thing. You saw the red flags immediately. I didn't see the red flags until he sat down and put his hand on her knee. And then I was like, "Oh no." And then he kept talking. And then she doesn't see the red flag until he says, "Do you think if you had apologized, he wouldn't have killed himself?" Like she doesn't see the red flag until he really twists the knife. But I think that's the benefit of being on the outside of that conversation, right? Being on the outside of that interaction. That's when people post online and they're like, this and this and this happened. And then everyone in the comments is like, "That's a red flag, girl, run." And the person posting it had no idea, or, maybe they suspected but didn't know for sure.
Speaking of like online, I don't know how old the kid is like meant to be, but he totally gives me the vibe of like the chronically online misogynist when he's like, she won't play hide and seek with him, and he's like, whatever, bitch.
Oh, that kid was an incel for sure.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, weird because he's a kid, but that was the personality, right?
Do we know like how old he's meant to be.
I don't know. 12.
Like he's got the face of a 40-year-old, so it's hard to picture him as less than say 14.
Yeah, I was gonna say 12, 14. That was probably what I was thinking. Yeah, I don't I didn't actually think about how old he was. I just thought, okay.
Oh, I was thinking about that from the second he was introduced until the end of the movie. I'm like, what is this kid? Is he a kid? Is he a teenager? Is he an emotionally stunted adult? I couldn't stop thinking about it.
Well, what I did think of the kid is that I thought he was supposed to represent how like toxic masculinity can affect young people, young boys who are exposed to it at a young age. You know, his response to "you won't play with me, whatever, bitch," is that a learned behavior. And so it's like, okay. And then the vicar doesn't even say anything to him. He doesn't correct him,
Yeah.
probably because, he's just one side of the other coin. And also, was that the big message of this movie? Like the big message of this movie is all men are the same. Is that the big message? Because they're literally played by the same person.
I think the message is that it's a generational thing where the ending where the creature's giving birth to itself is like each generation is creating the misogyny of the next generation. So I think that is kind of like the core message. I don't think it literally means to say all men are the same, but it's like we're all born of this culture which perpetuates itself.
Yeah, and it's the men who's giving birth to this,
Yeah.
which I thought was really interesting. I mean, aside from the fact that meh, I'm meh on scenes where there's like bird's eye view of people being born. Doesn't really bother me, but something about how they were like grotesque before, it was almost like a perversion of the idea of birth. And for me, I was like, wait, what? And then there's also womb envy and birth envy that's like real like psychological issues. And so I was like, I don't understand. Is this touching on that? Is this supposed to be is this what that is supposed to be? But I actually don't think it had anything to do with that. I think you're right. I think it was more about like not physically, they were physically birthing, but I think it was more of a symbolic, like a metaphorically birthing the next generation. I absolutely agree with you there. But and then she watches it happen. And so then there's that. Like what does that say? That women just stand by and watch this happen? They don't interfere. They don't jump in and say, "Hey,
What exactly are you supposed to do, like, from a literal standpoint in her position there?
yeah, that I could not tell you." But in terms of the metaphor that it's expressing, mothers have sons. And instead of standing idly by and allowing sons to be sucked into this world, you could be proactive, right? And I say this as a person who doesn't have sons. It's just one solution I'm imagining, right? But that's pretty much, I don't know. I mean, I guess you have male figures in your life that maybe you could influence, and I don't know. But all of this is an answer to the metaphor. It's not an answer to what literally could be done in this seat, which I think is nothing. I think what she did standing there watching it all happen was exactly what she could have done. But at the same time, what is, I guess the message really has more to do with the men and not to do with the female perspective.
Yeah, it would be interesting for that to be the message on top of also the whole part about "you did this to me," like, gaslighting her into saying, like, "This is all your fault." If the point was that women are supposed to do something, it kinda conflicts with the way it calls out her husband and also the creature blaming it all on her.
Right. So then what do we think about the right before the end, where if we follow what you're saying, which I really think is very accurate, that all of these all of these different forms of male of toxic masculinity just continues to birth the next generation and perpetuate these ideas. The very end of being James's last one to be born, is the message there is that he's a product of this multi-generational thing, right? So when he sits on the couch and she's like, "What do you want from me?" Maybe that's twofold, like women asking men, "What do you want from me?" But in terms of the characters we're given, she asks him, "What does she want? What does he want from her?" And he says, "Love." And I just think, Well, how fucked up is that? Because no, that's not what you want. You want control, clearly.
There's so much gaslighting women in horror movies, but this is like the final boss of women being gaslit in horror movies.
Well, it's appropriate then that the movie is called Men, right?
Yeah. So when I said earlier, like this movie is what I expected it to be and is not what I expected it to be, I did expect it to be just men being like blatantly horrible, gaslighting, just like doing all the things that all the men in this movie did. But I kind of expected it to be more of like a let's scare Jessica to death type situation and not like a crazy shape-shifting monster situation. I thought it would be
Yeah.
almost like a cult of manipulation type thing, almost like you've seen Hot Fuzz, right?
No, I
Oh, you haven't? I'm kind of just expecting like a town-wide male manipulation cult type story. So in that regard, it was nothing like
mm.
I expected. I did not expect all this like weird body horror shit.
Oh, no, not at all. But when you say it that way, it makes me think it's so interesting because the men in the movie act like she's an interloper in their world. And I like, is that also a message that men act like women are interlopers in their world? So it's just I don't know, it's intriguing. I like it. Like I said, I see why someone would say this was an excellent movie and I hated watching it. I didn't feel that way, but yeah, oh my god, the body horror.
So one thing I find hard to reconcile is just like on what level is this all happening and on what level isn't it? Like, I mean, it's hard to pin down because at the final couch scene we have, it's like straight up like, oh yeah, I've been a metaphor for your trauma this whole time. But then it's immediately followed by her friend, like a total outsider coming and seeing the car crash and the blood stain on the ground. So it's like, oh, so it all really happened. And there is like a crazy shape shifting monster that's also like a metaphor for her trauma.
So this is what I was saying when I said I know what to expect because I watched Annihilation and Annihilation gave me this exact same roundabout where I was like, wait a minute. So did she come back or did she not come back? Like it's not clear. Was that her husband? Was that not, always like weird questions about that movie. And so I thought, okay, I'm heading towards an ambiguous ending because the things that I've seen from Alex Garland or the things I'm familiar with from Alex Garland, it comes to from ambiguous endings. Now, Ex Machina is another movie that he wrote and directed, and I know I've seen it, but I cannot for the life of me remember anything about it.
I've never seen it.
It's one of those movies that comes up when you scroll through Netflix. Like, it maybe not anymore, but once upon a time it was on there, and every time you scroll through Netflix, Ex Machina would come up. And I know that I've watched it, and I cannot remember a single thing about it. But Annihilation, I remember very clearly, and I remember the fact that at the very end, I was like, "The fuck is going on?" And I thought I got to the same place here, but I was like more forgiving.
See, Annihilation for me is different because they actively travel into like a thing where strange things are supposed to happen, where DNA is like melding and reality is bending. So it's like it's got a clear cut of like there's the outside world, the kind of world we live in, and then they cross into something strange where anything can happen. But in this movie, it's like you pretty much start and end not knowing like where the metaphor ends and what is reality. And the fact that she reacts to everything in such a strange way, like from the tunnel to all her interactions to, and yeah, I don't think she ever notices or comments on or shows any indication that she recognizes that these are all Rory Kinnears. So it's like all of that is like, what's going on? She's not reacting to these things like she's a normal human being experiencing something strange. She's reacting to this like she's in a dream and it makes sense in a dream logic way to her.
Yeah. But I do think the reactions she had, I thought it was interesting because the most visceral reaction she had was anger, right? Because she's angry. She's angry with James, not just, where she explodes at him after he hits her, but she's angry with him for putting her in the position of feeling like she's got to feel guilty if he ends up dying, which he does. But then when the cop is like, we let that guy go, and she's like, why would you let him go? She gets pissed about that too. She actually has a few times in the movie where her response is anger.
And when the vicar says, "So why did you push him into it?" And she's like, "Fuck
Yeah.
you."
Yeah. And I can't, I guess off the top of my head, I can't like, I don't know how to connect that to all of what we've been talking about, but it does make me feel like it might be a miss in terms of how she is supposed to be representative of all women. Right? Like women are angry, but I don't even think that's true. I think there's a lot of women who are just confused. And I'm not sure because the messages that we're given are that, men are supposed to be specific things in our lives. One of which are reliable, the others protective, things like that. They're supposed to look out for our best interest. And so when you encounter those personalities, or you come to the conclusion like, wait, that isn't the case, or maybe that's not a burden that I should be allowed to put on men, and that feeds toxic masculinity in a big way. I think it creates confusion, right? I don't think women are as angry. I mean, I think there are women that are angry, but the way this is sort of a wide net cast, that thing makes women angry, and this thing makes women angry. And when you dismiss their concerns, it makes them angry. Because a lot of times, sometimes you're just afraid, not angry.
Yeah, I think it's a strange choice for Alex to write this movie essentially from a woman's perspective about a woman's experience with misogyny and not have any women involved in the writing process and not instead writing a movie that's at least partially like from the men's perspective of misogyny and like maybe have a character who's struggling between the lines of being like these people and trying to be better. I feel like that would be more of a movie a man could write about misogyny and not just like it's like he really felt like, and that was my biggest problem with the movie, that he was kind of just talking over women in this movie about misogyny.
Like a whole movie about Jeffrey.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like I got bad vibes from Jeffrey like immediately, but he never really does anything bad until he just flips on a dime and becomes a monster, like a literal monster, not even like a man who is a monster, but like
Yeah.
I'm a horror movie monster now, and I didn't like that.
Yeah.
I thought Jeffrey's misogyny should have been laid on in layers throughout the movie and not just flip on a dime like that.
Well, I actually thought, and I was lulled in just like the character was. Like Harper, 100% was like, Jeffrey's reliable. Like he's the one, he's safe. He's the one that I can turn to. Like when he's at the door and she's like, oh my God, it's just Jeffrey. That I felt the same way. I was like, okay, maybe he's gonna be the standout. Maybe he's the clone that like broke away and developed a sense of independence and is now trying to secretly rebel against the rest of the town. And he's gonna clue her in on what they're doing. So so I was definitely like, okay, Jeffrey's the pawn. And then at the end, when he flips, I'm like, wait, are you telling me even the guys we trust we're supposed to be suspicious of because at a moment's notice it could all just turn like that? I mean, that's a valid message. So maybe that's
I
it.
mean, I never really tried a horror movie landlord to begin with.
And the teeth. Oh my God. I was like, the teeth. The teeth are so much. Like, it reminded me of Justin Long in
Yeah.
that like Christmas horror.
Oh yeah, yup.
It's a Wonderful Knife. Is that it? Is
That's
that
the
the one?
one.
I was like, oh my God, the teeth. But anyways.
So I did think that it was a little too on the nose in some places, which conflicted with just totally unexplained like allegory in other places. Like we talked about the deep
Is.
scene and like that having no context, and then like the statue, and we haven't even talked about the plant man at all. So let's talk about him for a minute. What was this weird process where he's like putting plants into his face to become like some kind of weird druid creature? And it's like, what is this creature's basis in reality? I would have liked more of the folk horror angle to like, if this is a real creature, to like kind of explain where it's coming from and what it's drawing on. Cause it's like, like it seems like it's just born of her own trauma, but then at the same time, it's like alluded to some strange ritual going on and like the ancient carvings and everything. And you just kind of have to like make up or maybe know what historical folklore is drawing on to like make a connection there.
So you said before something about the Green Man. Um, so that is like one half of the statue, and the other half of the statue is called Sheila na Gig. And I looked it up after I watched the movie, and it is just this. It's not like understood what it is or what the origins are, but they're found in different places around like Ireland and Great Britain and Spain and France in like relics and like old ruins and stuff. These weird carvings, and they're found with like gargoyles and other grotesque carvings that are like gothic in nature. And so the idea is that they're interpreted as being something to ward off like evil spirits and death and things like that. So I cannot make heads or tails of that and how as to how that became how what the connection that is to the movie, because it felt very vulgar the way it kept going back to the statue, because the statue itself had this like sensuality to it. And then especially with the scene where the vicar is like, you're the reason, it's your fault that I'm having these feelings. It all kind of felt like, oh, this is just going back to like the original horror trope of, you know what I mean, like the obvious idea of like female sexuality being a sin or being something that's grotesque.
Oh, and I also wanted to ask, did you make the connection between the monster's injuries and the fact that they mirrored her husband's suicide injuries before her husband showed up on the couch? Because I didn't, and I felt so dumb.
No, I didn't. I didn't even.
Even when he was on the couch, you didn't?
Oh, I saw him with the same injury, but I didn't realize that was the injury he had when he died.
Yeah, so the reason that she cut that monster's hand in half is because that's what happened to her husband's hand on the fence. And then she runs over Jeffrey in the car and it breaks his leg just like her husband's leg was broken.
Oh, I didn't notice that. Wow.
Okay, because I felt not noticing it before the creature showed up as her husband. So I'm glad what up no.
No, that was subtle. Wow. No, I didn't notice that at all. Oh my gosh. I just thought they were one and the same. So if she cut one, the other one got injured. That I noticed right away. I noticed like, oh, she cut his hand and then the kid's hands broke split in half and but I did not make the connection back to the husband. But I mean, it is a really good statement about how they're all connected, right? All of these different forms of misogyny, all these different forms of like toxic masculinity, they're all connected and interesting.
And the other thing I think about is like, so assuming this is all real, as the ending when her friend shows up implicates, what are other people in this town experiencing? Because like she's on the phone with a female cop at one point. Is like, is this female cop just working with, Rory Kinnear cop and going to the bar and seeing five Rory Kinnears too? Or is he only appearing to Harper?
Yeah, I don't know. That I would not be able to tell you. I was under the impression that the entire town was made of all these men. But you're right. That female cop shows up and takes her statement, so she must live nearby. Maybe I don't know. That was I hadn't thought about that, but yeah. Anyway, we are approaching the hour mark, and I will just say as a closing remark that I love when I have an experience like this where there's stuff I know I haven't explored, and I know that there's things about this movie I haven't quite understood yet, and I want to look into it. And also appreciate that there are problems and things that were just amazingly done. I thought the music was phenomenal. I didn't say that yet.
I love the music. Yeah.
I thought the music was phenomenal. It starts off with this song that I didn't even look it up. I was gonna look it up at some point. Starts out with a song that's like really cool. It's a nice song. I liked it. But then the music turned and it was so appropriate for the mood every single time. And the best part is that that cool echo tunnel thing kept getting repeated and it got creepier and creepier. And at first when she does it, it's cool. But then it keeps getting layered into the movie in this like over these really just disturbing scenes. And I was like, wow, they're just using her own voice. It's her voice that's creating the intensity of these scenes. Pretty awesome. So I was a fan.
Yeah, I was definitely a fan of just like the way this movie was constructed on a whole. Like, there's some really beautiful shots. The music was awesome. I don't know like what kind of instrument there was for that, like the folky parts of the soundtrack. Like, it was really like strange and kind of like nice but unsettling at the same time. And there's times it reminded me, remember we watched Lamb? It kind of had
Oh my
that vibe, which was I also really just like the atmosphere of that movie.
Agree. So I don't know about you, but this was a 5-star movie for me.
I'm giving it a 4 because I have some issues with just the way it was written and the way I feel like he wrote it in a way that kind of talks over women more than introspects into what might be his own misogynist like tendencies.
And I think that's true to life. So I'm not gonna dock a star for that.
Yeah, I just think
But
it didn't quite rise in its writing to the level of the craftsmanship of the movie. And that also applies to the balancing of like the folk horror aspect being too underplayed. I would have liked more of that to be involved. Where it's like, it's almost at the point where they could have just cut all that out, cut out the green man, cut out the sculptures, because it's like, it wasn't explored enough. And if I have to like do all my own research just to understand what he's trying to get at, like there isn't that much of a point. And maybe it's more relevant if you're English, maybe that's more culturally ingrained, but I have no idea
yeah.
other than the couple things I looked up afterwards, and I still have like no context for the folk horror aspect of it.
Okay. Well, that's fair. Okay. Well, awesome. That was a great experience for me. I was pretty happy with this. Yeah. And just one thing that I was going to add that has nothing to do with this movie is actually about The Exorcist. I did confirm that Anne was in fact DreamWorks' first animated film.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so that I think will be all for this episode.
All right. Next week we'll be watching the remake of Nosferatu, right?
Oh, awesome. I didn't even look. Thanks for reminding me.
Have you seen the original?
No.
Want to do both of them then?
We could do that.
I want to see both of them anyway, so do a little comparison.
Okay.
Mostly talk about the remake, but we can compare it back to the original.
Okay. Look forward to it.
All right. Till next time.
All right. Next time.